Welcome back, YouTube. So today we're going to build a PC. As you can see, we have a lot of good parts here, a lot of high-end parts, especially this piece right here that not a lot of people can get. The RTX 3090 White Edition, okay? But I mean, who needs that anyway? You know what I mean? So let's get started with this build, shall we? Alright, so to get started in this build, we're going to go and take this motherboard right here. We're going to go ahead and take this out of the box, if I can figure out how to open it from the front, right? So what we're going to do, trying to be very careful with this. I'm going to open it up. Anything in here that I need? I don't know, let's just throw that to the side, it's all good. It's like a pizza box, just it's not as hard as I make it look. So then we're going to take it out of this static proof container. And lay it gently down back on the box so that way we have a way to work with it. And powering this whole system is going to be the Ryzen 9 5950X, 16 cores, 32 threads. This is a monster of a CPU now. And you want to make sure that when you are taking the CPU out, you don't touch the top or the bottom, because you could possibly damage the CPU. So very carefully open up the CPU. I don't want to fling it anywhere. Very carefully you open up the CPU, alright? And then what you want to do is you want to take this little bar right here, and you want to move it up. And then you want to line up the little golden triangle. I don't know if y'all can see that or not, with the triangle that's on the board. Like so. It should just fall right into place. You don't have to use any pressure or anything. And then you lock this little tab back down and voila, you've got your CPU installed. Alright, next step, what you want to do is you want to insert your memory. Today we're using the Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro. It's one of the few memory sticks that actually come in white. So I was super happy that I was able to find this in the 3600 megahertz speed, because with the Ryzen processors they run better at the higher clock speeds for the RAM. So let's go ahead and install that, shall we? These are some gorgeous RAM sticks though. Like, let's just take a look at that. It's just beautiful. Since we have 4 sticks, we don't really have to worry about putting them in any order. But if you only have 2 RAM sticks, what you're going to want to do is put it into the A2 and the B2 categories, so that way it works on dual channels instead of, you know, putting them side by side, because then you're not going to get the full potential. You want to make sure that you unclip the sides here. Some motherboards have clips on both sides that you have to undo. Some of them only have one. Our motherboard luckily only has one. And then you want to just line up the little key marks here with the key marks that are on your motherboard. You want to give it a pretty solid push. You might feel like you're going to break something, but it's all good. You know, just push down on it. Motherboards are super resilient, so you can put a lot of pressure on it if you need to. Just make sure that both sides click in, and you should be good to go. Click both sides in. This thing's going to be an absolute beast with 64 gigs of memory. There should be nothing that this thing has an issue with running, especially when we add in everything else that we have planned for this build. Click it right into place. So just like that, we got the RAM installed, and we don't need that anymore. So now what we want to do is we want to insert our SSDs. Today we have 2, okay, not 1, but 2 M.2 1TB 970 EVO Pros. I would have gotten the 980s, but when I was ordering parts, the 980s were not available, so I ended up getting the 970s instead. Alright, so unfortunately this motherboard only has one heatsink for the SSD, so for the time being we're only going to install one of these 1TB SSDs, which should give us enough storage anyway, and if not, we have external 6TB ones that we can use for the time being. But I'm going to have to find one that has a heatsink built onto it to make sure that it doesn't overheat in our system. because that can cause a lot of trouble. Little SSD, you know. Little SSD. So just like the RAM sticks, the SSDs are also keyed, so you just want to kind of line it up with the key mark that is on the slot itself at a 40-degree angle for it to pop in. A little pressure, doesn't hurt. And then you want to find the screw that's supposed to go into the standoff and screw it down, which there isn't one in this box. Alright, so inside the motherboard box you're going to have these standoffs which are going to be needed to insert your SSD. So make sure you take them out of the box before installing everything else on the motherboard. It'll be fine, it's all good. So then you take this little standoff and you screw it down on the board. And just a friendly reminder, I am no expert at this, okay? This is my third PC build. Okay, I'm just out here showing that anybody can do it if they really put their mind to it. As shown here. It's very simple. It's not really that difficult. But it can be a pain in the ass sometimes. So, especially if you don't have a magnetic screwdriver to hold on to your screws. So we're just going to screw this down. Now the SSD is installed. So now we're going to put the heatsink back on top of the SSD. Always make sure to take off the little plastic piece, because if you don't, it's not going to make contact and it's going to overheat. So make sure you just take off that little plastic and voila. I want to make sure that it goes the right way with everything else though. Get nice and lined up. And screw that little puppy down. Actually, I think it's backwards. We're coming into contact with the little solenoids on the side, so we're actually going to reverse it, even though I think it looks better this way. So that's a little design flaw right there, but it'll be fine. It'll be fine. So we're just going to insert the heatsink now on top. Make sure it's lined up with the screw holes, because you don't want to have to redo this and reapply thermal paste if you don't have to. So there we go, that's looking beautiful now. So with the SSD installed and the heatsink on, I think we're ready to put it into the case. So I'm going to cut out right now so we can get room for the case, strip down the case, all that good stuff, and I'll be back in just a second, alright? Alright, so we're going to go put this motherboard into the PC case now after I've completely stripped it down. As you can see, I've removed all of the panels, all of the unnecessary stuff that we're not going to need in this case, like the hard drive tray and the SSD mounts that are at the bottom. I've gone ahead and removed all of those, so now we're ready to install everything, and it should go wonderful. Yeah! Alright, so very carefully, what you want to do is you want to take your motherboard, you want to place it in the case, line it up with the standoffs in the case, and make sure it's lined up with all the standoffs in the cage. In the cage? I mean, yeah, it's pretty much a cage for the PC, right? In the case. Make sure that it's also lined up back here, so that way nothing goes astray. And then you want to take the little baggie of hardware that was in the hardware case, or you want to take the little baggie of the hardware that was in the hard drive cage out, because you're going to need some of these screws to screw down your motherboard so that way it's secured and it's not going to move around when you go to set your PC up. I don't need any of those screws right now, so I will show y'all which screws you need though. You're going to need 9 of them because there's 9 holes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 holes. So you're going to want to take these itsy bitsy round headed screws. They're very tiny. Luckily I got this little magnetic tray that I can throw them in for the time being. So that way I don't have to sort through them while I'm, screwing in the other screws. Alright, so now that you got your screws all sorted out, now it's time to screw down the motherboard so that way it doesn't move around. And you want to kind of go into a cross pattern with this, like you would with anything else that you have to screw down with multiple screws. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go in, we're going to kind of hand tighten all of them at first, and then we're going to go cross pattern to get them all tight. This can be a little tedious, especially if you've already installed your AIO, which we have not yet, because I want to kind of run that last just to see how everything fits first. I know a lot of people like to run the AIO before they put their motherboard in, just so that way they can figure out where it's going to run with the RAM. But since we're vertically mounting our GPU in this build, I want to kind of do it one of the last things, so that way nothing's in the way. And I know exactly where to run the cables. Be very sure that you don't cross-thread any of these screws, because it can make your life a living hell. Just ask me. Not that I've ever cross-threaded a motherboard, but as a mechanic, I have cross-threaded many of bolts before, and it is not a good time, I'll tell you that much. Remember, only hand tight it first and then cross pattern afterwards to tighten everything down fully. Hopefully y'all are learning something from here. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's other YouTubers out there, like Linus Tech Tips, Bitwick, all of them, that probably do a lot better of a job of, explaining and even showing off what you can do with this PC and how to build one. But this is for the average person who doesn't build PCs every single day of their lives, which no hate towards them, I love them very much, but they do get to build PCs every day, and as fun as that might be, I'm just not set up in that position yet to do so. So, if you're a first time comer, then these are the struggles that you will have to go through while building a PC. It is pretty easy, but it can be a pain sometimes for sure. And you get to see that firsthand, since this is my 3rd PC build. So you get to see the struggles firsthand on how to build a PC. Which some of these other YouTubers really don't show you. Some of them do, some of them show you some of the struggles, but not all the struggles. And that's where I come in. Now we're down to our last 2 screws to get in here. That one did not want to go in though. Alright, now that we got all the screws in. Alright, so we're going to insert our fans now. We're going to go ahead and remove the PCIe slots right here on the side of the motherboard, because we're not going to need these, because we are, like I said earlier, we're going to vertically mount our GPU, so we're going to have to install a new mount into here, so that way the GPU can be vertical. I mean, I think that's kind of common sense, right? I kind of get redundant, but it's all good. I just talk to hear myself talk sometimes though. I mean, it's like people in cooking shows. Like they'll be cooking food or whatever, and then all of a sudden they're talking about their dog, and they'll say oh, this food is beautiful, and
It reminds me of Old Yeller, like, you know, lemon pound cake. Well, it's lemon pound cake reminds you of Old
You're not supposed to talk to me, buddy. I'm talking to them.
You're looking over here at me.
This is true. This is all me. This is all me. Okay. Alright, so before we insert the fans, we're going to go ahead and hook up all the power cables for the motherboard and the USB headers and all that good stuff. So, let me turn this case up now that we have the motherboard bolted in. Screwdriver's in the way. Alright. Lean back here. Let's see. USB 3.0, we're going to need that. We need these 3. Honestly, I can't tell you what this cable is, but we probably need that too. So we'll get there when we get there. So, and the good thing about this case is that it has this little like cable management back on it, which I'll show later on in the video. But that's going to make it super easy to cable manage all the cables, which is an excellent reason to purchase the Liam Lee 011 dynamic case. It's awesome. Alright, so now that we have the cables finally somewhat managed to the bottom of the motherboard and all hooked up, now we're going to go ahead and install most of the fans, okay? And if you're ever building a PC and you're wondering, you know, if you want to make sure that you're getting the right suction for your case, that is like exhaust and intake, always remember this phrase: faces suck. So if the faces are up, right, it's going to be sucking air down. Okay, if it's like this and the face is on the bottom, it's going to be sucking air up. Okay, always keep that in mind. With that said, let's get these fans mounted in. We're going to have 6 for intake and 4 for exhaust, having a positive pressure inside the case, so that way all the components are going to stay cool. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to make sure that these cables are on the back side of the case, so that way none of the wires are showing from the front of the case. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now, I'm going to go ahead and put 3 on the bottom. Hopefully that USB 3.0 cable doesn't get in my way. If it does, we'll figure something out when we get down to that road. So right now I'm just going to run these cables through the little hole, reach around the back. Go ahead and pull them through. This is the most tedious part of this whole thing. I will say that. Still got a little slack on that fan wire. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Plug it in the wall.
Do I need to cut?
No, that's okay. I got a plug right here. Yeah. Is one of these your heater?
Yeah.
Which one? Or does it matter?
I don't think it matters. Yeah, it won't matter. It's all good. I think one of them's the internet, but you know, who needs internet when you've got great entertainment like this? Alright. I know this is going to look really, really bad, but I promise it'll be okay. So what we're going to do, we're just going to flip the case over, like so. So that way we can get these fans screwed in. And figure out which way is righty-tighty, because I'm looking at it backwards and upside down. So you just thread them in like so, going in a crisscross pattern, just like I talked about earlier with the motherboard. The motherboard. And you just want to screw them in like so. You might have to put a little bit of pressure on the fan on the back side just so that way you can make contact with the screw. But it's all good. You're not going to break the fan. Don't worry about that. I mean, who really needs 4 screws for the fan anyway? Like, I mean, 2's good enough, right? I might put 4 in some of them, but probably by the end of the case build, I'll probably only throw 2 in because 2's good enough. I've never seen anything, including cars, that have needed all the bolts that were included with the project. So, if it's good enough for a car, it's good enough for a PC. That's my motto, right? Don't worry about me looking over there. There's nothing over there. Y'all don't need to know about that. Okay. So we officially have 1 fan screwed in. Almost screwed in. We still got 1 screw to go on this 1 fan. And so we'll be back after I get all these fans installed. And I'll show you what's next, alright? Now that we have all the fans installed, as you can see, we went ahead and installed the AIO as well, and the vertical mount for the GPU. So we are ready for the GPU mounting now. So let's go ahead and unbox this lovely thing that y'all seen me throw at the very beginning of this video. Don't worry, no GPUs were harmed in the filming of this video. This GPU right here is one thick boy. I mean, it is thick. With 3 Ks. Ah! I gotta watch out for that shelf behind me. The lovely 3090. Go ahead and peel this off the back here. If I can get a good... Is there not a tab? Alright. Let's get this sucker in here. I'm gonna have to turn this PC around for just a second while I see what I'm doing. Okay, so it looks like the riser cable needs to come forward just a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and just unscrew it. And we're going to leave it unscrewed, even though it's probably not the best, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere, so should be all fine. While we have it unscrewed, we're going to go ahead and hook in the riser cable to the GPU just to make it a little bit easier on us. clipped in. Go ahead and grab the tiny screws that came with it. And that's gonna be a tight fucking spot to get into. Now that I look at it. But it's fine, these little micro screwdrivers should do the job just fine. You can also go ahead and like install this before putting the mounting bracket into the case. It could be a little bit easier for you if you don't have like small screwdrivers like this one. But lucky for me, I do, so I'm able to just barely fit into that gap. To get these screwed in, so. So there y'all go. GPU's installed. I'm gonna get the wiring under control and we'll see you back at post. So it's been about a month since the last cut that you've seen. So we ended up having to wait for the extension cables for the fans to come in because apparently we did not have enough on hand. So we got those in about a week later. We got everything hooked up. Found out that the Commander Pro was actually dead on arrival, which was unfortunate, so we had to order another one of those. That took about a week to come in. So we got that hooked up, got all the fans running, everything was working fine. It was cool. We started it up, ran it for about a week or so just to make sure that there was no other bugs that we needed to find out about it. And we went to record the next day, right? Went to record this video for the next day, and the CPU died. So we ended up having to postpone it a little bit longer until we got another CPU, which y'all already know, the Ryzen 9, especially the 5950Xs, are super hard to find right now because of the chip shortages that's going on right now. I know y'all know about it. It's really hard to get anything. So we finally got it all together, and that's what you're about to see in the next shot. So, enjoy. Alright, moment of truth. Let's see if this thing boots up. Alright, we got power. Let's see. Come on. And we got boot. Even though I already knew that was going to happen, because, like y'all already seen, I ran this PC for a week already. So, kind of anticlimactic there, but you know, it's all good. Alright, so now we're going to run some Furmark tests and just like see where like benchmarking is at and whatnot, all that good stuff. Since we do have a very powerful GPU here, we're going to go ahead and GPU stress test. And we're going to run this for about like 5 or 10 minutes or so. And, you know, just see where it's at temperature-wise and FPS-wise. See how much it's actually putting out at max resolution and whatnot. So, yeah. We'll see you in about 5 to 10 minutes, alright? Alright, so it's been about 10 minutes now. And the temperature reads about 72 degrees Celsius, which is fantastic, especially for this 3090. Because 3090s normally run a bit hot, and with 72 degrees under a stress test, like that's not bad at all, That's fantastic. That's what you would get with any normal card, let alone a beast like a 3090. As far as like FPS goes, we're averaging about 220 at 2K, which is amazing. Which means in Fortnite, I should be able to get a pretty standard 240 frames with the settings that I run. I shouldn't drop a frame at all. So definitely going to improve my gameplay. We may get some footage at the end of that. And yeah, enjoy the B-roll shots and the peeling of the plastic off the glass. You want to get a close-up of that? Alright, moment of truth. Ooh. That's a nice peel. That's a nice peel. Alright, time for this side. Hopefully it's just as nice and doesn't rip. I wish I had some like ASMR for this. There we go. God, that thing's beautiful.